And next up is Jim Basney to wrap things up.
Thanks, Jeanette. Hi, everyone. So we have 30 minutes to go, and so we've got a few items of business, and then we're going to have a general discussion about takeaways from the summit this year, feedback from you, thoughts about trends, and things we should be looking at over the next year, the next 10 years. So be thinking about that. But first, it's my pleasure to welcome Von Welch up onto the stage. There he is. So as I mentioned yesterday, Von stepped down as Director of Trusted CI a few months ago. But as you all know, he's been a very insightful and effective leader for Trusted CI and in the community more broadly, helping us with our cybersecurity challenges and setting an excellent vision for us. And so I'm presenting Von with a little token here that says, in recognition and appreciation for your leadership and tireless service to the scientific community, to Von Welch, October 2022. So join me in thanking Von for all his service.
Thank you very much, Jim. Let me just say it's great to see everybody back here together for multiple reasons now. Just the ability to have a chance to gather again, and then also I have to say I've missed this community over the past few months, and I'm just so glad to see both some familiar faces and some new faces here. And I'll just let you know, Jim, thank you for taking the mantle. I've had a number of people here this morning very nicely tell me, boy, it's amazing how much better it's gotten since I've been gone. So you're doing a great job, you and the whole team. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Von. The check is in the mail for your nice comments. So Jim Marsteller has been helping us out, and I mentioned that he's the co-chair with Anita Nikolic of the program committee. He's going to help us during this 30-minute wrap-up discussion, but before we jump into that, I also want to have Jim come up and accept a small token of appreciation. We're also giving a similar token to Anita, but she had to leave early. So this one says, Jim Marsteller, in appreciation of your leadership of the 2022 NSF Summit Program Committee.
Oh, that is really nice. Thank you. But I got an award like 3 years ago in San Diego. No, it's a pleasure to work with this community, and I'm so glad I'm able to continue doing this. Okay, so I guess time to work, yeah.
Yeah. Right, so Jim's going to help us with this now open discussion time. And so I hope to have some input from you all in the room and from those online, and we'll have Kelly relaying those messages online. Also, you either just received or very shortly will receive a link to a survey, both in email and I think in Slack. And so anything in addition to what you can give as input to this discussion right now, please do give your input in the survey. That's very useful for us in planning next year's summit. So let me open things up to what y'all are thinking about takeaways from the last few days of this meeting, common themes that you heard about, findings that you think should appear in the report from this meeting, or any feedback about how the meeting has gone and what you'd like to see in next year's meeting.
Yeah, so yeah, just raise your hand, I'll come over to you.
Thank you. This has been a great conference. I've had a lot of fun. The thought that's been going through my mind for the past couple of days, but especially this morning, is I hadn't seen much direct discussion about a federated web of trust. and how this may relate to things like refeds or some of the assurance specifications that are in place and the assurance rankings of certain federations. I'm wondering if anyone might have a comment about what it would take to have a sufficient web of trust between a number of organizations that could automatically all recognize the validity of an identity and the scopes of allowance that they have, and how big can a web of trust be?
Any thoughts on that topic? Or, all right, but maybe right next to you is Tom. Tom might have a thought on that, and then we could move on to the next topic.
That's hard. Identity federations are versions of what you say, but I think what you're talking about is sort of layered on top of something like that. I think the main part of how I might answer that, though, is there's a combination of two things, a small thing and a big thing. That probably goes into it. The small stuff is all the standards and the technology, so you know what it is you're trusting kind of clearly. The hard part, especially for scaling, is all the non-technical things. It starts with relationships, agreements, policies, perhaps, change management processes, because once you achieve this level of trust or whatever, it has to be maintained. That's always a very active, very difficult. Entropy sets in. It deteriorates without active maintenance. And that's what's really hard. So building a new one, good luck. Leverage an old one, make an old one better is, I think, probably a smarter strategy. So you've got some IGTF stuff here, you've got identity federations. Those are probably the two main resources in our neck of the woods that can be marshaled for further purposes, potentially. There may be something more to, I don't know, in terms of there's becoming some notion of resource federations, not identity federations, not the users being federated, but the resources themselves. And there's been some of that blueprint architecture kind of introduces that idea, but it's like when you have a number of those where they want to share the resources. And so there's, that's new. There's an ecosystem for research networking is happening in the US. It's a very long runway, slow to take off. They're working on doing the first demo with a cryo-EM facility, so that users can remotely use those kinds of instruments. And they want to have a way of sharing that kind of stuff outside of the institution that bought and operates it, because increasingly the funders want them to do that, and there hasn't been a way. So there's some things to look into. I'm not quite sure what you want this web of trust to do, but those are some things, those are some too many thoughts probably for right now.
So it could be a good topic for next year. And also I see John Haverlack has given a reference to solid.mit.edu that speaks to the topic of web of trust. So that could be a good reference for us to check out. But let's go ahead.
Well, hello. One thing that I noticed in this sort of conference as opposed to other conferences is that traditionally you'll have a lot of different tracks at a conference. You'll have maybe 2 or 3 or some 5. And having at least the 2 main days here being everybody in the same room, you're not having to go, oh my God, I want to see all 5 of these things. Which one do I want to pick that's the best? And then being able to sort of mingle and interact with people a lot more easily. I thought that was very positive, and I think that'd be a nice thing to continue with.
Yeah, no, we always discuss that. Keep the plenary or do parallel tracks, so that's really helpful. Thanks.
I'm going to ask a boil the ocean question, and I'm specifically going to say NIH, right? So the challenges faced by NSF researchers are very commonly faced by NIH researchers, and they come with some heavy liability potentially in terms of stuff. And a lot of us who support the NSF in the same way that we support USGS and some of the other agencies mentioned, is there any potential for an N trusted CI or some other more broadly federal research agency activity?
Yeah, great question. I think there's great potential, and if you're asking me as director of Trusted CI, I'm not aware of a peer in NIH that we would connect with. We've had good discussions about NSF NIH cooperation and collaboration over the years at the summit, but it's been fits and starts. But it'd be great to see something become more concrete in the near future. So if people have ideas, it'd be great to hear about them.
Craig. I was trying to hold myself back, but not for too long. There was the whole session yesterday about the OT annual challenge that the Trusted CI team worked on. But I think that did kind of pop out as a theme. MagLab gave us like an amazing overview of everything they've got going on. And I think I just kept hearing kind of people pick up on that theme. And I thought that was very encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, did other people notice that OT being a big theme this year? I certainly did.
And the most recent publication of the Research Infrastructure Guide also much more explicitly now identifies OT as an area of responsibility for cyber.
Oh, and the new revision of the CIS controls also speak better to OT concerns. Yeah.
Any other comments or observations people may have? Doing the Donahue thing.
I just was interested, is there going to be additional information about where we can find slides and presentations that were presented through the weekend or week?
Yes, so keep an eye on trustedci.org/summit. And so materials will appear there. Anybody have more?
Yeah, I would just say all the plenary talks have been recorded, so we will be publishing them on our website at some point. So if you missed a talk, you'll be able to hear it. Unfortunately, the trainings, we just don't have the capacity right now to record them, perhaps in the future, but all the plenary talks will be available for you to watch on demand. Yeah, I think we're going to maybe put them on the actual program page on the websites that everyone's been using, so it's easy to find them as well. And we got a question over here, or comment.
Just like a brief comment on some of the trainings that were on the first day. So I found them to be really interesting, but maybe the length of them was a bit too, like it was maybe like 3 or 4 hours. It could have done well with like 2 or 3 hours, and maybe like a mix of content, like more interaction between each of the kind of the guests that were here.
So I'll just follow up that Jim had mentioned you should be have received a survey, and we have, we're asking for your feedback for the training sessions as well as the plenary talks. This is very valuable information for the instructors to let them know, maybe more hands-on or the length was a little too long. That'll help them if they, want to do something next year, fine-tune that training session a little bit better. And another thing too, I'll just mention, this is the first time in 3 years that we've actually been in person. The past 2 years we had to do this online, which was a learning experience in itself. But it has some advantages, it did. Like for the training sessions, we're able to spread those out over a week, so you didn't have to choose, like when we're here for one day. We've got 5 tracks, so you have to pick a morning and an afternoon, and which one you're gonna go to. So those are the things that we kind of struggle with. So one of the other things we're also trying to figure out is how much people are wanting to meet in person versus doing things online. And this is the first year we kind of did this hybrid thing. So any type of feedback you can provide for us would really be helpful.
I'll stand up for this since I'm way down here on the end, nobody can see me. How about with some of that extra time that he just suggested, we take that and we do a red-blue team exercise with all of the neat frameworks and management tools we spent 3 days talking about?
This was definitely a framework bake-off we had this year. And that's the other thing too. So we have a day and a half. We've thought about increasing it to 2 full days for the plenary, or having an additional half day of training or workshops so we could do those types of tabletop exercises or challenges. So great information. Again, I'll just say the very last question I think on that survey, it's a free form box. Please feel free to give us any type of suggestions that you think would make this even better.
I brought this up with a few people before, but in a larger audience. I'm wondering, so previously I was much more involved with NOAA, in particular with the Integrated Ocean Observing System, and we used to have these data management and cyber infrastructure meetings, and it was all about data, moving it around. Nobody really talked at all about cybersecurity. And I've been gone for 1.5 years now. That may have changed, I doubt it. I'm just wondering, this is obviously a very sort of NSF-focused meeting. I've heard NIH mentioned. Trusted CI obviously supports CI Compass NSF initiatives. I'm just wondering about expanding it to include NOAA or NASA and some of the efforts and initiatives within other federal agencies, maybe in an effort to standardize things, God forbid, across the federal government. You know, is it intentional that this is NSF focused, or you know, could it be expanded a little bit to see what other federal agencies are doing?
I think the work of Trusted CI, it is intentional that we're NSF focused, we're NSF funded, and so we're intentional about using those funds to secure NSF science. But as you say, we all benefit from standards across science that's happening, funded by different agencies, across infrastructure that's being developed and supported by different agencies. So it seems like, in fact, maybe this year we had a little bit less cross-agency participation than we've had in past years. And I'm not sure if that's just a random chance thing or if that's a post-pandemic thing, or, but that's really good feedback for next year's summit, that we could be a bit more intentional about recruiting from other agencies and having a panel specifically about that, for example. So that's one answer that's specific about Trusted CI and specific about the planning for next year's summit. But the other thing I want to say is, if you see opportunities for us to make those connections, please help us make those connections. So let me know, is there a meeting that a Trusted CI ambassador should be going to help us connect up with activities that are going on? So we don't want to keep our blinders on and only think about NSF, but you're right that these connections are very valuable. Yep, I think Martin's got.
So it was for me very worthwhile coming across the pond to here. So thank you for that. It was nice meeting new people and new communities for me, and hopefully you also learned something from me. What I at least also found very interesting to learn was about your fellowship program. That was new to me, so that's good to see that reaches out so much. And also, I'm not sure if they're still here, but all the students, and that they presented to them what they're doing for. I think that's very interesting to learn. So thank you.
In addition to cross-agency, international connections are so valuable. So really appreciate making the trip internationally, and I agree. Having some face-to-face time with the fellows and the students is always a highlight of the summit each year.
They're our future employees.
Just a quick comment. I really am enjoying the rotating location format. It's going to be great in Berkeley next year, but I think I can speak for everybody that the data center tour last night was just great. I mean, what a first first-rate experience and a great chance to sort of network with our peers in a open environment and just seeing common themes in the data center. It was really, really great. Really enjoyed that last night.
So maybe a Berkeley Lab data center tour next year.
I think that cheese might finally be settling into people. Nap time. How much time have we got? About 10 more minutes.
Yep. Good. Yep. Some more input from our virtual attendees. Okay. Sean is saying yes, he can do a NERSC ESNet tour in Berkeley. He's already on it.
This sort of touches on the identity assurance theme again, but it's something that we're contemplating as we're building a new architecture, and it's that if we create a potentially even unified identity management system, we're really serving two different types of user. We have the external user, the scientist, the teacher, government person, whatnot, and we also have the staff. So I'm curious in terms of identity assurance, the requirement of multi-factor authentication and so forth. Is it typical practice to actually separate your identity system so that it has different assurance requirements and even different processes for authenticating and authorization between those two facets of access?
Any thoughts on that topic?
I'm sure Tom does.
Tom? Oh, good man, Tom.
We should meet offline. There's some religion around this, not necessarily on my part, it's just on the part of anyone who disagrees with me. But I find that although there are needs to manage different types of communities and different types of attributes and policies and so forth that pertain to them, doing so in a single system gives you far more ability to manage use cases than dividing them at the identity level. Have a uniform identity system with the capabilities to treat people differently. Things like grouper, when the time comes. It's a more mature thing, but that's the kind of stuff that can help manage those circumstances because people can be external users, later staff. It kind of reminds me of students at universities. A lot of universities make a separate system for their students or for their parents or something like that. And some will say that's the right thing to do. Others will say that's been the worst decision they've made in their IAM team in a long time. So, for what it's worth.
Thank you, Tom.
Just a quick additional comment to it. It's what you see always is here staff and externals and guests, and it's a very vague discussion you see. So I would also assume from the first part, put it in one system and split up from there, but don't start with already two separate systems, because then you get into, I have staff, I have external researchers, I might have all kinds of other types of guests, and you get into a very quickly a shady area of what you could get. So yeah, no, I would start with one, I would think.
I see there was a comment from John online saying, isn't uniform identity assurance what China is doing with social credit score, which it's a different type of,
On the topic of identity management, let me say I'd be really interested in feedback in the survey about the topic of identity management and how much of a focus it should be in the summit next year. You probably know that identity management is a topic that I'd be happy to spend every hour of every day talking about. And I need to fight that temptation because it's one of many topics that I know are very important to you all. So we had multiple really interesting sessions this morning, in my opinion, about identity management that I enjoyed a lot. So interested in your feedback about the balance of identity management as a topic compared to other topics that we might cover in future summits. That includes workshops and training sessions and the plenary sessions.
So I'll just say one of the things that we tried to do different this year was to send out, to try to pull the community. I think it was probably around April or May, saying, we've got the summit coming up. What topics would you like for us to try to, what content would you like for us to try to have at the summit? We had a list, and we got a lot of feedback, and we really tried to use that this year to drive the call for participation. So supply chain attacks that Ted talked about was one that was really high up there. Nation state attacks was another one. Unfortunately, we were trying to get a speaker and it fell through. That's something I think we'll probably continue to do next year as well. Let you decide. And if there's topics that you really want to hear, make sure that those are included and we can make that part of the proposal call. Is there a comment back here? Nope.
Well, should we give people
the 4 minutes back?
Well, before I let you all go, let me say again, thanks to everyone for participating. Thanks to the speakers. Thanks to everyone involved in organizing the meeting. I want us to give a particular thanks and round of applause to Diana, who is hiding in the back of the room. I think probably you all interacted with Diana in multiple ways. She was really instrumental in making this such a big success. So thanks, Diana. I appreciate it. And Jeanette, thank you for being our MC. That was. Let's give Jeanette a round of applause. All right, and anyone else, feel free. You want to thank for their good work, please find them as we're making our way out. It's really good to see you all. Thanks everybody for participating online. It was too bad that Kelly was not able to join us in person, but she was really great keeping us connected to the virtual attendees. And she says, I echo Jim's thanks for everyone's contributions to making this year's summit a huge success. We look forward to seeing you all in Berkeley in October 2023.
Yeah.
So, all right, with that, safe travels, everybody. And Jeanette, why don't you wrap us up?
Just one brief announcement. Those of you students and fellows, you have a shuttle that will be taking you back to Indy. So please check your email for the more specific details on that. And I believe it's meeting in the parking lot right outside the building. And with that, you're all free. Thank you. See you next year.